want you to picture someone for me, the modern self-improvement warrior.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is you, maybe it's someone you follow online.
Right.
They've just finished their deliberate exposure to the extreme cold. The cryo plunge was a bit much today, so they just settled for a freezing shower.
The home version.
The home version, exactly. They've blended their exotic mushroom stack, their specialized turmeric tincture.
All the powders and potions.
And maybe, just maybe, they've even administered a peptide injection that they got through some, complex, semi-regulated gray market system.
Which is a whole other topic.
A whole other topic.
Okay.
They've checked their continuous glucose monitor. They made sure they hit their 90-minute REM quota on their smart ring, logged 8.5 hours of tracked sleep.
Every metric accounted for.
Every metric.
Uh-huh.
And now, they're ready. They're pursuing peak human performance, the 100% optimized version of themselves, with a level of micromanagement that would make a Fortune 500 CEO, just blush.
And this is where the paradox hits. I mean, the ideal outcome of all that discipline, all that data, all that expense,
It's pretty incredible.
it should be a feeling of limitless energy, deep satisfaction, emotional calm, right?
Right.
Yet so often we see the complete opposite. Many people in that exact scenario, they feel, strangely brittle,
Brittle. That's a great word for it.
rigid, and intensely anxious. They are often more emotionally fragile and less tolerant of even minor disruptions than they were when they were just eating moderately and sleeping 6 hours without tracking anything.
Exactly. This is what we're calling the optimization paradox. Why does the pursuit of total, measurable, quantified control,
Over every single physiological input.
why does it so often lead to a state of just sustained emotional suffering?
Well, we're constantly being bombarded with this idea, right?
Yeah.
That health, happiness, longevity, they're just a series of complex cheat codes.
Yeah, you just need to find the right hack.
You're told, often by very expensive programs or, self-proclaimed gurus, that if you just find the precise mix of red light therapy wavelengths and specific fasting windows down to the minute,
And the perfect supplement stack.
then you unlock nirvana. But our sources today, which bring together, the hard science of neurochemistry with deep clinical insights from therapists, they suggest something much more profound is happening just beneath the surface.
So what if that relentless chase, that intensely data-driven micromanagement, what if it's less about genuine wellness and more about feeding a deep underlying psychological need for control?
In clinical settings, we observe this constantly. The obsession with rigidly adhering to the protocol, it actually starts preventing the client from achieving the very state of calm and well-being they're pursuing in the first place.
And that is the crucial pivot for today's deep dive.
Yeah.
We're opening the master file on what happens when biohacking, driven by rigidity, fear, and obsession, actively undercuts mental health. We're going to dive into why this frantic search for instant, high-tech physical relief so often ignores the foundational scientific basics. And in the worst cases, it traps people in a cycle that looks terrifyingly similar to orthorexia and crippling anxiety.
So our mission today is really to give you a shortcut to being well-informed, to distinguish between the hacks that work because they leverage real science and those that are just, expensive distractions that feed a fear response.
Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission is always to expose the hidden mechanics of high-performance living. But sometimes that means exposing the things that are sold as high performance but actually lead to breakdown, burnout, and just unnecessary emotional strain.
And the unspoken rule we are revealing today, the one that truly defines long-term sustainable health, is this one.
What is it?
If you cannot find wellness in the mundane, you will never ever find it in the miraculous.
Wow.
We are here to provide the clinical and scientific framework to distinguish between true science-backed augmentation, which supports the nervous system, and modern-day snake oil, which just capitalizes on fear.
Okay, let's unpack this with a proper definition, because the term biohacking is so broad now, it risks losing all meaning. What's the working definition we're using for this analysis?
At its core, biohacking is simply a practice that uses science and technology to alter and optimize the body's internal and external conditions.
Right.
The driving goal is augmentation. We want to boost physical function, sharpen mental clarity, and, extend our health span.
The number of years we live healthily, not just the number of years we live.
Exactly.
And the essential characteristic that elevates this beyond just, eating well or exercising is the data layer, right? The obsession with measurement and precise tactical adjustments.
Absolutely. True biohacking, or at least the modern version of it, relies on rigorous data collection and analysis. This is where all the gadgets come in.
The smartwatches, the fitness trackers.
The continuous glucose monitors, the CGMs, they gather this granular, real-time information so you can make tactical adjustments to your behavior.
So it's a personalized approach.
Ideally, yes. Driven by things like genomic sequencing and AI to design highly specific diet and lifestyle plans based on your individual genetic data.
When you look at the theory, I mean, it sounds like the ultimate path to self-knowledge. But when we look at the range of practices, the spectrum is just huge. So let's start with the things that are truly foundational.
It's so crucial to draw this contrast immediately because many practices marketed today as cutting-edge biohacks are actually just ancient wisdom.
That's been validated by modern science.
Exactly. We categorize these as old age proven. We're talking about practices like deep mindful breathing, consistent yoga, cultivating mindfulness, and the simple act of spending time in nature.
The stuff that costs nothing.
The stuff that costs nothing. And the research is profoundly robust. It shows measurable effects on cortisol reduction, nervous system regulation, and overall health. They are low cost, low risk, and highly effective.
Okay, so then we move into the slightly more technical, but still pretty low risk category, which often involves nutrition. This is where we see the sophisticated application of dietary principles.
Precisely. This includes strategic nutritional plans like intermittent fasting or keto, where the goal is specific metabolic shifts. But more broadly, it involves something called nutrigenomics.
Nutrigenomics.
It's the science of using specific nutrient-dense, anti-inflammatory foods to positively influence your gene expression.
So you're literally using food to talk to your genes.
In a way, yes. We are talking about leveraging leafy greens, high doses of omega-3s from quality sources, and spices like curcumin to actively manage inflammation pathways. These are powerful science-backed tools, but, they still rely on food, not a syringe.
But the popular conversation, the one that generates all the clicks and sells the expensive memberships, that's focused on the other end of the spectrum, the new questionable hacks.
And that's where things get really murky. This end includes practices where the evidence is conflicting, or it's very expensive, or it's highly invasive.
Like what?
Things like whole body cryotherapy, certain uses of red light and near infrared light, or on the extreme fringe unregulated gene modification, or these gray market peptides.
Let's elaborate on those peptides and NAD infusions.
Yeah.
We mentioned in our initial analysis that some therapists are seeing clients who bypass the fundamentals entirely to go straight for these fringe methods.
Right.
What's the professional concern there, especially around these expensive fringe techniques?
The concern is really threefold: efficacy, cost, and regulation. OFI therapy, for instance, delivering vitamins, minerals, or NAD+ directly into the bloodstream. It's popular for claims of faster absorption and combating aging.
Okay.
But the danger lies in the unregulated gray market. The sources note that some clients are ordering non-FDA-approved peptides, which are just short chains of amino acids that signal the body to perform specific function.
They're injecting themselves.
They're injecting themselves with no medical oversight, no safety testing, and often with really questionable purity. They are going straight for the high-risk, expensive, invasive interventions because they are seeking a magic bullet.
And completely bypassing the verifiable proven basics.
Like sleeping well and eating vegetables.
That immediately connects back to the mental health paradox we started with. The intensity of the obsession drives them toward the most drastic measure available, even if it introduces significant risk. The search for a shortcut often leads right into the next viral trend, which is why we have to dissect the case study of dopamine fasting.
Ah, yes, dopamine fasting. It achieved viral status, largely driven out of Silicon Valley, and was described as this productivity craze.
Right, the common perception is that you lock yourself in a room and just stare at the wall to reset your brain.
Which is a bit of an exaggeration.
A bit. And the mechanism claim is powerfully seductive, right? Temporary abstinence from constantly rewarding activities, doom scrolling, social media, overeating, gambling, allows the brain to reset its dopamine response.
And the result supposedly is better focus, greater control, reduced anxiety, and a renewed ability to find pleasure in simple, low-stimulation activities.
But the most important detail that often gets missed is its origin and its true intent.
Exactly. It was developed by Dr. Cameron Sipa, a clinical psychologist, specifically as a focused application of cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT.
So it was a therapy tool.
It was a therapy tool. Its original goal was highly specific: to manage addictive or compulsive behaviors by creating a deliberate gap, a space of conscious choice between the impulsive cue and the inevitable reward.
So it was never meant to be a weekend where you deprive yourself of all human interaction or stimulation. It was a targeted therapeutic strategy.
Precisely. The practice is flexible. It can range from a few hours of abstinence from one specific reward, say putting the phone out of reach when you're working, to a more intensive program aiming to break deeply ingrained behavioral loops.
The focus is on making it inconvenient.
Inconvenient or difficult to participate in those mindless rewards. The core psychological benefit is achieving greater awareness of your impulses, so you can intentionally choose how to spend your time, instead of being unconsciously driven by external stimuli.
If the underlying goal is increasing awareness and reducing overstimulation, why did the viral version focus so heavily on the chemical term dopamine detox, which, as we noted, is highly misleading?
Well, that's the power of marketing language, mixed with a fundamental misunderstanding of the science. It sounds scientific and radical, but it causes genuine exasperation among neuroscientists.
Okay, let's address the core neuroscientists' warning head on. You cannot detox from dopamine. Why is that concept scientifically imprecise and maybe even dangerous to misunderstand?
Well, dopamine is not a toxin, nor is it some finite resource that you drain and then refill. It is an absolutely essential neurotransmitter for motivation, movement, learning, and cognitive function.
It's critical.
It's critical. If you could somehow stop producing it, which you can't unless you have a serious medical condition, you wouldn't feel focused and calm. You would feel profoundly demotivated, maybe even paralyzed, struggling to initiate simple actions.
That's the exact opposite of what people want from this.
The exact opposite.
So the goal isn't to eliminate dopamine, it's to regulate the timing and the context of its release.
Exactly. We need to clarify its function. Dopamine is not primarily about pleasure that's more linked to endogenous opioids or endorphins. Dopamine is about wanting, seeking, anticipation, and the motivation to move toward a potential reward. It drives our seeking behavior.
This brings us to probably the most fascinating piece of neurochemistry in our sources, the reward prediction error. Can you explain the function of this mechanism and how it relates to our digital lives?
The reward prediction error is a core concept in learning theory. And what's absolutely fascinating is that dopamine neurons don't necessarily fire maximally when you receive the reward or the treat itself.
That's interesting.
Instead, they fire strongly when two things happen. Either the reward is unexpected, or a specific cue strongly predicts that a reward is coming.
So if I train a lab animal, or myself, to expect a notification chime, the biggest hit of dopamine is when I hear the chime, not when I actually read the often disappointing notification itself. It's the intense wanting that gets triggered by the cue.
Precisely. And in the context of compulsive behavior, the system gets stuck in seeking mode. You're constantly checking the cookie jar, and every time the jar is refilled, whether you expect it or not, the circuit is reinforced.
And what happens when the reward doesn't show up?
If the expected reward, the winning bet, the tasty treat, the valuable notification doesn't arrive after the cue, the dopamine neurons go silent for a moment.
They just stop.
They go silent. And that silence is a powerful teaching moment for the brain.
So the real purpose of SIPA's original strategy, the CBT intervention, is leveraging that prediction error.
Yes. The goal is to break the association between the cue or the impulse and the expected reward. If you consistently introduce abstinence after the cue, the anticipation pathway weakens and the compulsion diminishes over time.
So you're aiming to reduce the chronic overstimulation.
Exactly, because that's what desensitizes our neural circuits and leads to generalized impulsivity, lack of focus, and that chronic low-level anxiety so many people feel.
The science supports that compulsive technology use activates the same dopamine pathways as substance use disorders, which reinforces that addiction metaphor in a neurological sense.
It does.
So the detox isn't about emptying the tank, it's about recalibrating the sensitivity of the circuits so you can function normally without constant high-intensity input.
And this is where the balance comes in. By reducing overstimulation, you essentially allow your neural pathways to recover their sensitivity. Things that used to feel boring, reading a book, talking to a friend, just sitting quietly, now start to feel novel and enjoyable again.
But you have to get through the withdrawal first.
You have to navigate the initial withdrawal, which might manifest as low mood, profound boredom, restlessness, or increased anxiety because your system is craving the usual high-intensity rewards.
The key is understanding that this discomfort is the process working.
It's the sign that it's working.
We've established the neurochemical mechanism, but now we have to confront the core psychological cost. If these tools, biohacking, data tracking, specific protocols, are supposed to increase well-being, why are clinical therapists seeing them drive people deeper into anxiety and rigidity?
It's a critical question. And therapists consistently observe that this relentless, rigid optimization is fundamentally a manifestation of over-control.
Over-control.
The clients who are chasing the perfect mix of keto, NAD infusions, specific peptides, and cold plunges, they are typically those who struggle profoundly to tolerate fear and uncertainty in the world.
So it's not just about wanting to be healthy. It's a desperate attempt to create safety.
Precisely. They are terrified of the final outcome. They fear getting sick, they fear regret, they fear professional failure, or they just fear the inherent messiness of life.
And the complicated, rigid protocols become their psychological shield.
Yes. If I can control my diet 100%, if I track every single biomarker, if I follow this precise, expensive, complicated plan, then I feel safe. I have eliminated the risk.
But the system itself, the rigidity, just feeds the anxiety loop. How does that show up clinically?
Well, the rigid routines become intensely demanding. They're all-consuming, they feed the very anxiety they're supposed to solve, and they often lead to a kind of emotional dissociation.
A detachment.
A detachment from their feelings or surroundings because they are so intensely focused on the internal mechanisms of the protocol. A healthy preference for eating well becomes a rigid mindset where any deviation causes genuine panic.
This is where the term orthorexia comes in, isn't it? The pathological obsession with consuming only healthy or pure food. How close does this optimization obsession come to treading the line toward obsessive-compulsive disorder or generalized illness anxiety?
In severe cases, the optimization literally becomes the disease. We are talking about criteria that meet or nearly meet clinical thresholds for OCD or eating disorders.
Wow.
The focus shifts from health and vitality to purity and adherence. Eating becomes a performance metric, not a source of nourishment or social connection.
You mentioned a powerful, almost tragic anecdote from the sources about relational destruction caused by this rigidity. I think we need to elaborate on that to help people understand the profound, isolating nature of this pursuit.
It's a critical point because true health is holistic. The clinical evidence describes clients whose strict, non-negotiable diet protocols, often handed down by expensive wellness programs, ended up completely destroying their core relationships.
How absolute was this rigidity?
It was absolute. Any social function parties, family meals, vacations had to be altered dramatically or just completely avoided to meet the client's non-negotiable dietary protocol.
So you can't just go out for dinner with them.
You can. If the environment or the food deviated at all, the person became severely dysregulated.
Right.
They couldn't handle the uncertainty or the perceived contamination of their system.
And that must be incredibly isolating.
It's profoundly isolating. This constant need to control the environment made them impossible to spontaneously enjoy life with. Hyper-rigid protocols isolate you from the necessary emotional fulfillment and belonging that only meaningful connections can provide.
That's a stark illustration of the unspoken rule.
Yeah.
Using healthy habits to control life rather than enhance it walls you off from the very fulfillment you crave.
Exactly. And this isolation is compounded by another massive issue we see: skipping the proven fundamentals for the fringe.
Right.
So many people are jumping straight to expensive niche techniques, injecting peptides, taking NAD drips, buying exotic supplements, while actively skipping the proven basics.
The basics being consistent, high-quality sleep, eating sufficient vegetables, and getting regular, heart rate-raising exercise. So why the preference for the fringe over the fundamentals?
It often is a deep psychological avoidance strategy. I mean, the market is just flooded with snake oil and quick fixes that appeal directly to those who want to bypass emotional discomfort.
It allows them to maintain a narrative of denial.
It does. They can insist, I don't have anxiety, I just have a stubborn vitamin deficiency that needs this $1,000 infusion. They are trying to solve a deep emotional or systemic nervous system problem like chronic stress with a technological or chemical workaround, rather than doing the hard, consistent work of therapy, confronting their fear of uncertainty, and mastering the mundane basics.
They are seeking an external miracle to solve an internal problem. And the system, unfortunately, capitalizes on their chronic dissatisfaction, which only makes them more vulnerable to the next expensive protocol.
And it becomes a perpetual state of searching. If you believe the answer is external, you will always be one supplement, one expensive gadget, or one highly restrictive diet away from true happiness. And you'll remain a consumer, never a master of your own well-being.
If we connect this back to how the brain actually functions, the good news is that we can master the real unspoken rules of neurochemistry, the science that actually works for building lasting, sustainable change.
And the first thing we need to do is reset expectations and bust one of the biggest, most persistent myths in self-improvement.
Let's dismantle the 21-day myth. That persistent idea that it only takes 3 weeks to lock down a new habit has done incredible damage to people's self-esteem when they inevitably fail at that 3-week mark.
It's not evidence-based, and it's a recipe for self-blame. The research shows that habit formation is a long-term strategy, not some quick hack.
So what's the real number?
Studies have found that new habits take a median of 59 to 66 days to form.
So 2 months.
A median of 2 months. And for a complex habit, something truly established, like going to the gym consistently or meditating daily, it can take up to 335 days to fully establish.
That is nearly a year.
Nearly a year.
That is a staggering difference. If the median is 2 months, not 3 weeks, that changes everything about how we approach a new routine.
It's a crucial psychological insight. Knowing the median is significantly longer manages expectations and prevents unnecessary shame or discouragement when you miss a few days or struggle at the 3-week mark. The real failure isn't missing a day. It's quitting because you believe you missed some artificial 21-day window.
So what does the research say are the success factors for getting past those initial months of friction?
There are 3 main factors. The habit must be genuinely enjoyed, or at least provide a noticeable benefit. It has to be planned and specific. And crucially, integrating it into your existing morning routine significantly increases the likelihood of success.
We call that bundling or stacking.
Exactly. For example, laying out your gym clothes the night before, or preparing a healthy lunch right after you brush your teeth, or committing to 5 minutes of mindfulness immediately after your coffee. These preparations eliminate what we call limbic friction before phase 1 of your day even begins.
This transitions perfectly into leveraging our natural daily rhythms. We need to stop fighting our brain chemistry and start working with it using this 3-phase daily blueprint.
Absolutely. Our 24-hour cycle is governed by these powerful natural chemical shifts that influence our capacity to overcome that limbic friction, that inertia, anxiety, or procrastination that prevents us from starting a task. We can segment the day based on our dominant neurochemical state.
Starting with phase 1, the first 0 to 8 hours after waking, the high action phase. What chemical reality defines this high-performance window?
This is your high-energy, action-oriented phase governed by the natural circadian rhythm. You have naturally elevated levels of dopamine, which drives motivation, adrenaline, which provides energy and focus, and cortisol, the stress hormone, which makes your awareness sharp and precise.
So we should be using this natural chemical boost to punch through the inertia on the tasks that require the most effort.
Correct. This is the prime time to tackle habits that require high energy, intense focus, and precise execution. This is your window for concentrated, deep work, heavy resistance training, high-level creative problem solving, or deep studying.
You are naturally chemically prepared to override distraction and execute complex tasks.
You are.
But what's the subtle trap of phase 1, given those high-energy chemicals?
The trap is that while you are energized, you are also prone to distraction and reflexive multitasking because dopamine is so high. Focused attention is still a learned behavior here, and if you expose yourself to stimuli like email or social media during this peak window, you will often find yourself burning your best focus on low-value tasks.
Okay, so moving into phase 2, 9 to 15 hours post-waking. The energy profile shifts here, right?
The chemistry changes fundamentally. Cortisol and adrenaline naturally start to decline, and you have naturally higher serotonin levels. Serotonin is often linked to feelings of well-being, satisfaction, and calm, but also to a more relaxed cognitive state.
And what's the optimal activity for that relaxed cognitive state?
This is the ideal window for habits that require less friction and less precise, sharp execution. Think creative exploration, brainstorming, writing a rough draft, or tackling administrative tasks.
And physically?
Physically, this is a great time for lower focus requirement activities like zone 2 cardio, stretching, or walking. You benefit from the lowered internal pressure and heightened feeling of well-being.
So use the morning for the sharp, heavy lifting and the afternoon for the looser, exploratory activities and connection.
That's the pattern recognition we need to truly optimize time and energy based on real neurochemistry, rather than just sheer willpower.
And finally, phase 3, 16 to 24 hours after waking. This is the ultimate non-negotiable reset phase.
This phase is all about eliminating limbic friction for tomorrow's phase 1 and maximizing deep recovery. The priority here is maximizing rest and sleep quality.
Right.
We must radically minimize light exposure, especially blue light, which is powerfully disruptive because it signals the brain to produce stay active neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin. Swap the TV and screens for books or journals. And crucially, the room must be consistently cool and dark.
You are literally preparing your neurochemistry for a successful high-focus phase 1 tomorrow.
This is the ultimate low-cost biohack.
That's an elegant approach to building good habits.
Yeah.
But what about the dark side? How do we effectively break an existing, entrenched, impulsive bad habit using these chemical principles?
Breaking an impulsive habit is, well, it's simple in concept, though tremendously difficult in execution because the pathway is so well worn. The core mechanism is bringing conscious awareness to the behavior immediately after it occurs. Most impulsive bad habits, like doom scrolling, compulsive eating, or negative self-talk, happen unconsciously. You have to recognize the impulse and the action the moment the cycle is complete.
It's about interrupting the autopilot before the reward prediction system has time to lock in that positive reinforcement.
Exactly. And then the critical step. You immediately engage in a positive replacement behavior. The specific positive action is less important than the immediacy and the fact that it is beneficial for you.
And simple, immediate physical actions work wonders.
They do.
Like what?
Simple examples like 10 jumping jacks, 15 squats, or push-ups work perfectly because they can be done anywhere, they interrupt the cognitive process, and they are inherently good for you, even if you don't necessarily enjoy them in that exact moment.
So you're disrupting the cue reward pathway by introducing an immediate conscious interruption,
Right.
a physical stimulus.
Yeah.
So instead of punishing yourself, you replace the destructive impulse with constructive action. That's clever because it retrains the system to associate the impulse not with shame, but with energy expenditure.
It's all about changing the association. You are introducing a momentary cognitive effort that stops the habitual response from completing its loop. The more consistently you do this, the weaker the old pathway becomes, and the easier it is to choose the constructive action instead.
Finally, I appreciate that the sources bring in a practice that sounds like soft wellness, but is actually one of the most powerful forms of low-tech neurohacking available. Gratitude.
Gratitude journaling is anything but soft wellness. It is rigorous neuroplasticity training. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to physically reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. It's how we learn and adapt.
And how does gratitude specifically leverage this?
By consistently focusing your awareness on the positive aspects of your life, you are conditioning the brain to prioritize and strengthen the neural pathways associated with positive emotional processing. You are literally training your brain to find the silver lining.
To search for and reinforce positive outcomes, even in stressful or frustrating moments.
Exactly.
So it's building mental resilience against anxiety, stress, and frustration, the very things the over-controllers are desperately seeking to eliminate with their expensive, rigid protocols.
Absolutely. It's an internal hack. You are modifying your brain's processing of external factors, making you inherently more adaptable, more resilient, and less reactive. That ability to navigate complexity and stress with equanimity, not the elimination of all perceived risk, is the ultimate goal of true biohacking.
If we strip away the expensive gadgets, the fringe supplements, and the complicated protocols, the true, non-negotiable foundation of well-being is prioritizing rest, recovery, and fuel. The basics. Let's start with rest. Sometimes people feel tired, even after 8 or 9 hours of sleep. What is that phenomenon and why does it happen?
That is known as unrefreshing sleep or non-restorative sleep. It's a common experience. You may have achieved the recommended duration 7 to 9 hours, but you wake up feeling completely unrested.
Like you haven't slept at all.
Sometimes feeling profoundly exhausted, as if, to quote one physician, a truck ran over you.
So the duration is irrelevant if the quality is compromised. What degrades that quality, even if the sleep time is there?
The causes are generally systemic. Major internal culprits include chronic stress, generalized anxiety, nervous system dysfunction, or underlying pain. When your nervous system is on high alert due to stress, even if you are technically unconscious, your body may not enter the deep restorative stages of sleep like slow wave and REM effectively. Your body is still generating cortisol even while horizontal, degrading the repair process.
And what are the behavioral or environmental factors that silently chip away at restorative sleep?
Lifestyle and environment play a huge role. Ambient light, background noise, inconsistent sleep-wake times, and especially consumption of even small amounts of caffeine or alcohol before bed can degrade the quality.
Alcohol's a big one for that.
It's huge. It might help you fall asleep faster, but it severely compromises the second half of your sleep cycle, limiting REM and slow-wave sleep. Also, prescription sleep aids and even melatonin can cause profound hangover effects, leading to morning grogginess and worsening that non-restorative feeling.
For someone who is chronically tired, what's the simple baseline test suggested by experts to determine if they're simply chronically sleep deprived versus suffering from poor sleep quality?
The simple test is to just skip setting your alarm on a day off. If you consistently sleep in late, say, 2 or 3 hours past your weekday wake-up time, it signals that your body has built up a significant sleep debt and is chronically sleep deprived.
So it means you're just not getting the rest you need during the week.
Plain and simple.
And the hacks that actually work here are, again, the boring basics, but applied with rigor. Consistent sleep and wake times, a cool, dark, quiet room, and pre-sleep relaxation practices like deep breathing or mindfulness to calm the nervous system.
Mastering phase 3 of the Daily Blueprint is the ultimate low-cost sleep hack. It is the ultimate low-cost hack, and it costs nothing.
Moving from rest to fuel, we need to address the profound and surprising influence of diet on mental state, which has given rise to the field of nutritional psychiatry. This is far beyond just eating healthy.
This is where we discuss the gut-brain axis, or the GBA. It is a critical, complex, two-way communication system. It includes the vagus nerve, the longest nerve connecting the brain to the digestive system, and it links the composition of our gut microbiome directly to our mental health.
So it influences everything.
Everything from mood and anxiety levels to the manifestation of clinical depression.
What is the surprising chemical link that underscores this communication system?
It's the fact that 90% of the body's serotonin receptors are located in the gut.
90%.
90. Serotonin, as we discussed, is a key neurotransmitter that regulates mood, appetite, and sleep. When your gut microbiome is unhealthy or out of balance, it can fundamentally disrupt the chemical signaling that regulates your emotional state.
Wow. So the health of our gut bacteria doesn't just affect digestion. It directly dictates the chemistry that regulates our emotions.
Absolutely. The gut microbiota can regulate emotional response. Human studies are showing strong associations between specific changes in gut bacteria and the occurrence of mood disorders, including findings in cohorts diagnosed with major depressive disorder.
This foundational insight explains why nutritional alterations are now being used therapeutically as a primary intervention.
It does.
So let's break down the macronutrient insights from the clinical studies. We are looking for correlation here. How do different fuel sources impact mood and anxiety?
The studies found very strong and often highly personalized correlations. Higher consumption of fat and protein correlated robustly with increased happiness, increased general well-being, and decreased feelings of anxiety and depression.
Why do fat and protein appear to be so crucial for mood regulation?
Well, protein is essential because it's broken down into the amino acids that serve as precursors for key neurotransmitters like dopamine and norepinephrine.
The building block.
The building blocks. Protein also slows carbohydrate absorption, which helps stabilize blood sugar and therefore stabilizes mood swings and energy levels. Healthy fats, especially omega-3s, are integral building blocks for brain cell membranes. So optimal intake of both supports structural and chemical stability.
And on the flip side, what do the data show about carbohydrate consumption?
Higher consumption of carbohydrates, particularly refined and processed carbs, correlated with increased stress, anxiety, and depressive symptoms. This relationship is often linked to the rapid spike and crash in blood sugar that accompanies high glycemic foods, leading to mood volatility and nervous system agitation.
That's compelling. One specific analysis you mentioned showed a surprisingly strong correlation between carbohydrate changes and anxiety scores.
Yes. That specific study indicated a correlation so strong that changes in carbohydrate consumption accounted for over 60% of the observed anxiety change in that studied group.
Over 60%.
Which suggests that for many individuals, managing the source and quantity of carbohydrate intake is not just a weight management strategy, it's a critical component of mood optimization.
So if someone is trying to optimize their mood, not just their marathon time, managing their carbohydrate intake is vital.
It is vital. And finally, we have to expand on the critical micronutrients that support this entire system. We need optimal levels of vitamin D, omega-3s, and magnesium.
Why those three specifically? Let's dive deeper into their functional mechanics, moving beyond just listing them.
Let's start with vitamin D. While it's known as the sunshine vitamin, it acts more like a hormone, regulating mood, immune health, and inflammation. Low levels are strongly linked to seasonal affective disorder and general depressive symptoms, particularly because of its role in neurogenesis and neuroprotection.
So it maintains the health of brain structures.
Yes, the very structures responsible for emotion.
And omega-3s. We hear about them constantly, but what's their specific structural function in the brain?
Omega-3 fatty acids, specifically DHA and EPA, are essential nutrients because they literally form the structural components of brain cell membranes. They improve the fluidity and the communication speed of neurons.
That's like upgrading the hardware.
Exactly. You can't build a high-performance computer with low-grade components, and omega-3s are the highest-grade component for brain architecture. Low levels are clinically associated with pessimism, impulsivity, and depression.
And finally, magnesium, the mighty mineral. We know it supports over 300 biochemical reactions, but how do we leverage it as a neurohack?
Magnesium is a natural calming agent for the nervous system. It plays a critical role in regulating neurotransmitters and modulating the stress response. For cognitive function specifically, the compound magnesium L-threonate is often recommended because it is designed to cross the blood-brain barrier more effectively than other forms.
So it gets right to the brain.
It makes it immediately available to the brain to support synaptic density and communication. Other forms, like magnesium citrate or glycinate, are excellent for maintaining overall bodily levels and promoting muscular relaxation. Focusing on these science-backed nutritional components is far more effective and foundational than chasing unregulated fringe detoxes.
We've established that the obsessive pursuit of external protocols often leads to isolation, rigidity, and the destruction of relationships. So, what does the truly fulfilled, resilient life look like when you move beyond the checklist?
It looks like holistic self-care. True well-being integrates the physical, emotional, social, and intellectual dimensions.
It fundamentally moves away from the idea that wellness is a solitary checklist you complete alone in a cryo chamber.
And toward an integrated experience of life. And that journey begins with integrating mindfulness into everyday life rather than just treating it as a once-a-day obligation.
Mindful living is critical. We aren't just talking about formal seated meditation, though that helps. We are talking about mindful eating, paying genuine attention to hunger and fullness cues, and savoring each bite.
And integrating grounding techniques when you feel anxiety rising.
This practice reduces your automatic reactivity to emotional triggers and significantly enhances emotional resilience. It is the ability to choose your response rather than merely reacting.
And we must emphasize the connection to the external environment, which is often completely overlooked by those glued to their tracking metrics.
That is the profound, accessible power of connecting with nature. Spending time outdoors, whether it's gardening, hiking, or just sitting in a peaceful, natural setting, fosters tranquility, awe, and calm. This natural input acts as a crucial counterpoint to the complexity, rigidity, and overstimulation of modern digital living.
It forces the nervous system to relax because the input is organic and non-demanding.
Furthermore, nurturing the social dimension, nurturing relationships, is truly indispensable. Meaningful connections, strong community ties, and actively seeking support foster a deep sense of belonging and emotional fulfillment.
As we discussed earlier, these are the exact factors that hyper-rigid optimization protocols tend to isolate you from, and in severe cases, eliminate entirely. You can optimize your cells, but you cannot optimize away the human need for connection.
And finally, the intellectual and purposeful side. Engagement in purposeful work or creative pursuits that align with your deepest values and offer a sense of meaning contributes to profound long-term fulfillment. It's the antithesis of the instant gratification loop. It requires patience, effort, and commitment which builds self-esteem.
So if we synthesize the purpose of the whole dopamine detox concept, it's essential to clarify that the goal is not eliminating all pleasure or seeking.
No.
The goal is simply to reduce chronic overstimulation and break dependency. It is about creating boundaries, not building walls.
So if the listener decides to implement a dopamine reset, they must be prepared for the inevitable discomfort and withdrawal.
Absolutely. You may feel significantly worse, initially bored, irritable, anxious, or slightly depressed, before you feel better and experience clearer thinking or less intense triggering.
That initial pain is the sign that the process is working.
It's the cost of recalibrating a system that has become dependent on high-frequency, high-intensity rewards.
The ultimate achievement, the true sweet spot, is avoiding dependency while establishing reasonable, flexible boundaries. This requires self-knowledge, not just adherence.
It requires deep self-knowledge. You must honor your unique neuropathways, recognize your triggers, and avoid the trap of following someone else's restrictive, one-size-fits-all program just because it's expensive or trending on social media.
Optimization should always serve your life.
Making it richer and more adaptable, not rigidly controlling it until you are isolated and brittle.
This leads us to the final, most powerful insight, tying all this back to resilience. True fulfillment comes not from eliminating all potential for suffering, but from knowing you possess the internal resources and adaptive capability to handle complexity when it arrives.
Resilience involves developing coping strategies, embracing adversity, the inevitable messiness of life, as an opportunity for growth, and cultivating a mindset of perseverance. This allows individuals to navigate life's complexities with fortitude and adaptability. This ability to navigate complexity, not eliminate it, is the real ultimate biohack.
The system that adapts, survives, and thrives. The system that is hyper-rigid.
Shatters under pressure.
We've peeled back the layers today and found that the secret to total life mastery isn't some new age supplement, a specialized peptide, or a freezing cold dip that temporarily distracts you from your underlying fear of the final outcome. It's the radical discipline of doing the boring basics consistently and cultivating a mind resilient enough to find peace when the world is chaotic and complex. Optimization should serve your life, not control it.
And remember, the pursuit of knowledge and continued intellectual growth, learning new skills, reading challenging texts, engaging in debate, also contributes significantly to that sense of purpose and fulfillment. It demonstrates that growth is an integrated, holistic process, not just a physical or chemical one.
The unspoken rule of engagement is that intention without action is just entertainment. If this deep dive sparked a genuine shift in perspective, a realization that you might be substituting obsession and over-control for genuine holistic self-care, I want you to leave a mark right now.
We ask you to think critically about this information and how you're applying it. What is the one boring, basic, be it consistent sleep, eating more actual vegetables, drinking sufficient water, or practicing gratitude that you are finally going to master, moving it from the should-do list to the must-do list?
Comment that basic below and let us know what specifically makes it so hard to prioritize in a world that constantly sells shiny, complicated quick fixes. Like this deep dive to commit to replacing one mindless reward, that reflexive doom scrolling habit, that unnecessary impulsive purchase, with a meaningful positive activity today.
And ring the bell only if you want the signal of the next Unspoken Rule video to be a purposeful reminder to think critically and learn something foundational, not just another automated Pavlovian chime. Until next time, stay well informed and keep mastering the quiet, resilient spaces in between the noise.